Hi, I'm Chuan.
Hi.
What? What is that?
I'm
ZULA ChickChats.
Why did you laugh?
Hi, I'm Chuan.
Hi, I'm Julian.
I'm Jerica.
I'm Leah, and this is
ZULA ChickChats.
So today we're going to be talking about schools and whether your school status even matters in the first place. What schools were you guys from?
I was in St. Michael's Primary School, and then I went to Ballester Hills Secondary, then I went to Ngee Ann Poly. I went to University at Buffalo, which is at SIM.
I'm from Holy Innocents Primary School. Then I went to Orchid Park Secondary School, which is located at Yishun. I went to Singapore Poly to complete my diploma.
I was from SCGS Primary, SCGS Secondary, and I went to ACJC.
I was from IJ Primary, so CHIJ OLGC Primary, CHIJ SJC St. Joseph's Convent Secondary. Then I went to CJC, and then I went to NUS Business. So since we're talking about school status, for example, right, what exactly makes a school elite?
If a school is single sex, there's some thinking, there's some like impression that it's like slightly more elite. Just the geographical location. Example, right, those schools along Bukit Timah, or like those schools in like Katong, Siglap, kinda more elite.
Obviously, if your school name isn't known, it is a neighbourhood school, most probably like Orchid Park Secondary School. Every time I meet someone new, right? Oh, what's your school? Orchid Park Secondary School. Where is that from? Yeah.
I literally just asked her that yesterday. I was like, what? It's also like the other factors like grades. You know, MOE has a whole list, right,
Yeah.
of schools. So the single-sex schools tend to be higher up on that list. Naturally, people think that single-sex schools are more elite, I feel.
Other than that, it's also the
Yeah.
branding. Like most schools, like ACS or SJI, there's branding to it, and they have a whole umbrella of schools below them. Or they have very, very strong alumni, and those like board of directors. They are very supportive of the school.
Yeah, and I also think like the school is elite where the school has a very, very long history to it. Oh, in 1950 or in before World War II, this school was already here. Like, you know, for example, something like that. Because of the long history they have, the establishment is longer and thus they are more elite or said to be more elite.
A lot of elite schools usually have only express streams.
Some elite schools, they have only Express and IP.
There's some schools that offer like you go to the secondary school for Sec 1 and Sec 2, then in Sec 3, Sec 4 you're like in a JC. I would say that having that is considered quite elite lah in that sense, because it's like you are saying that you're one step ahead of everybody else and you can move up the ranks, you know what I mean? I think the resources that is allocated to the schools also is higher.
Most elite schools are independent
Yeah,
schools,
that's
so they
true.
have like more resources in a sense to like give your students more experiences.
Independent, they can accept money from donors.
Yeah.
Therefore, they have like more money.
I realized that many of this is linked to how the media portray the schools. Like, you know how people from like Nanyang Girls' School or Raffles Institution, they always appear on newspaper to be like, oh, this school got this scholarship and that scholarship.
The role model.
Yeah, how the media portray these schools actually affect whether people think this school as being elite or not.
After we define how these like schools have this like, you know, factor of like being elite and everything, right? How does this differ from what someone would call a neighbourhood school in terms of like, you know, culture? What are some stereotypes that you have of each school?
There's this stereotype that I have that people from elite schools, right, sort of look down on the kids that are from the neighbourhood schools a little bit. This was when I was in poly lah. There was this like taxi driver who was complaining about how hard Singapore is to survive. This girl from a famous school wrote like a blog post slamming poorer Singaporeans about how like they don't help themselves. She just talked a lot in the blog post, and then she ended off with "Get out of my elite uncaring face." It turned out like this girl was a daughter of an MP.
Oh my god!
Ever since this episode, right?
Yeah.
There's this like stereotype that I have of people in these like brand name schools.
Yes.
How they have a very different view of what Singapore is.
Most of them are in the richer estates, and they like congregate together, so they haven't really seen like what it's like outside.
I realized that my friends from elite schools, they're like super not Singlish lah. Then they speak super well and they speak with an accent. Like, yeah. When my juniors start coming in and they have an accent, especially the girls, I'll be like, IJ girl. Yeah.
I was from a school like that. The school actually drills a lot like your mannerism, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak. They always say must be like fine young ladies, or like the way you sit. You cannot like anyhow sit, open your legs like that.
Somehow, how you communicate with your teacher does affect how you communicate with other people as well.
Actually, my teachers were quite formal, I would say.
Yeah, probably that's why.
My own stereotype of maybe someone who is not from a elite school, they speak their mother tongue more.
We do mix a lot of our mother tongue into English. Like, you know, you speak to your friends halfway, then you're like, 真的咩? Or you speak to your friends of other race, then you will be like, try to speak their language. Aku tak tahu, you know, that kind of thing.
Elite schools, right? It's not because they can't speak or they don't like to speak it, but it's because there are lesser people like that. Majority are English speaking, so you have lesser chance.
Another stereotype that I had at that point in time of like neighbourhood schools, right, was that you're like more paikia.
Let's put that.
I think based on personal experience, right?
Yeah.
It's true, you know, when I was in secondary school. There were a lot of stories of people going downstairs to the nearby block, then they have to bring out like a posse of like 5 people. And then these 2 people will start fighting. Break it up when the cigarette finishes. suspicious.
Actually, I'm guilty of that. There was this senior who actually blocked me at the toilet door. I took my entire class, and then my class got all the abeng alin one. You take out monitor badge, take out the class rep badge. With me and my monitor in front, we walk towards the senior.
Fights, right? Bound to happen, like even you're very elite or what, the school don't like bring it up. So they want to settle everything like below, like just hush everything because they don't want people to know.
I think there was a lot of like don't care the teacher. There were times, right, we'll like talk back to the teacher until the teacher let the class cry. Really?
That's why I said you all like pai kia or whatever, right? It's because everybody break together, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's a stereotype. I feel that my other perception is that you all always hang out after school and like those on malls and everything, right?
Oh my
They're
God.
damn fun.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
And it's like they're always doing fun things like bowling and playing pool. And like my friends will go there, we eat and then okay, go home.
You just eat, right? Go
You just
go out,
eat only.
just
Just eat only.
What you want to do today?
Eat
lor.
So after sports day, you finish at like maybe 12. Then we just, okay lor, then we go to this place to play pool, right? The whole pool place was all from our school.
What are some reactions from people, right, when you tell them you're from like an elite school or a neighborhood school?
So there was this one time where I
Yeah.
think it was like somebody's wedding or something
Yeah.
like that. Then there was this like elderly lady. So she asked me what school I was from in Chinese. So I answered her in Chinese. 我是普里中学. Which doesn't explain what school it is. It's not even like a translation of Balestier Hill Secondary. Then she was like, oh, huh? So I said, oh, Balestier Hill Secondary School. Then she was like, oh. Couldn't continue. The conversation just couldn't carry on.
My cousin was in Victoria. I was actually comparing myself to him, and then at that point of time I felt a bit inferior lah because I really wanted to go to an elite school. So I posted on Facebook that my first choice I would want to get in this Nanyang Girls' School. And then my last choice was actually Orchid Park Secondary School. My relatives, even though they made really minor comments, just like, oh, it's okay lah, you can do better. But for him, he get the, wow, you're so smart. Even though they praised us both equally, but I felt like the way they praised us was very different.
You will hear like elite school, like most of them is like, oh wow, rich school, like or if
Oh,
not,
true.
it's like the can tell. Have you ever gotten that? Maybe from like the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, your
The vibe.
mannerism, or the vibes in general. Like if you have a negative perception of rich school, some of them will be like, oh yeah, okay, then they probably think that the kids they're like quite bratty lah, or like very
arrogant
in their own world, like they don't know like the real world.
Yeah, I always kena the like, wow, you from NUS business, that kind of thing. Also because I look like this, and then people think that like I cannot go into NUS business. Sean Fu every day. Oh my god, you're not from LaSalle, man. Would you send your in the future if you have a child to elite school or neighborhood school, or what kind of school you send your child to?
For me, because like alumni, then my daughter kind of automatically in that school already. I would want my daughter to go to elite school also because I personally really enjoyed my experience there. I was exposed to a lot more things since young. I guess when you're elite school, you have more resources, about Leah said just now. So your school can afford to send you to more like courses or things like that. It's part of your curriculum like dance or drama, musical instruments.
In elite schools, the mannerism is taught very well and all that. So maybe for primary school, I would want to send her to an elite school to start off the right basis, even though to us it may not matter when we are a student, but to the parent it will matter.
Don't talk about the mannerism part. Actually, I think it's a lot to do with parenting also lah. It's like not just
Of course
what
lah,
the
of
school
course.
teaches
Yeah,
you,
that's
but
true.
parenting from young.
I'll be a good parent. The school will help me out more.
Both my primary and secondary schools were really near my house. If I were to pressure my kid into anything, right, it would be like to go to the nearest school. There's a lot of pressure in bringing a student. If I can eliminate this pressure of traveling, right, it would be so good for the kid.
That's true.
I mean, if my kid wants to go to an elite school, then okay lah. But I would make it clear to my kid that he's doing it for himself. It's not for me.
If it's really too out of the way, then like no lah, I'm not gonna force you to go to that particular school. I would rather my go to a single sex school only because I personally went through that experience. At the same time, I feel that in schools that are more elite, the culture there, like you all say yourself, so you don't care the teacher everything, right? When you're young, it's very easily influenced. I don't want that like negative culture to be to influence my child, and then later it's like they won't study or like won't do well. At secondary school, you haven't graduated yet, you haven't gone to uni, you haven't gotten a job yet. It still affects where you can go and get a job. Do you think your intelligence or capability is defined by the school you have gone to?
How capable you are and how intelligent you are, right? I'm genuinely for how willing are you to learn as a human being lah.
Correct.
You can be from a neighborhood school, but you can slowly work hard. We've heard of stories where kids from ITE, like normal tech stream, where they eventually end up being scholars. This kind of thing is not like biological, it's built upon.
I think that the thing that elite schools have over neighborhood schools, right, is just the environment. There's more pressure on you. You need to study harder. This system that makes this kid want to work harder or work less hard. That results in the person that will come out from the school.
Academics doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Whether you succeed, it's like mainly your EQ, not your IQ as much.
Yeah.
Just because like your grades are very good doesn't mean that you're going to be a more successful person in the future or whatever.
It's true. Intelligence-wise and capability-wise, it's up to the individual to decide. My school may not be the top tier school in like the entire list of like maybe secondary school. People from top tier schools have ended up in the same JC as me, and I have done better than people in top tier schools because of my own personal motivation to want to do better.
So today we talk about whether school status matter, and yes, we do agree to a certain extent, but we concluded that it's up to you to decide how far you go in life.
So if you guys have any opinions on neighborhood schools or elite schools, feel free to leave it in the comments and let us know what else to talk about next time.
And as always, remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Bye!